The moment the doctor says I'll never walk again, my own father checks his watch. Not his face, his watch. Like my spine shattering into 11 pieces is eating into his golf tee time. My mother doesn't even look up from her phone. My fiancée squeezes my hand once, twice, and then lets go so slowly I actually think it's an accident. It isn't. 3 days later, she's holding my brother's hand instead. Same hand, different owner. That's the day I die. Not for real. Worse. I keep breathing, keep existing, keep being wheeled around in a chair nobody in my family can look at directly. Like paralysis is contagious. My name is Nolan Vance, heir to the Vance Group, one of the biggest holding companies on the East Coast. Or, I was the heir. Right up until the crash on Route 9 turned my legs into something the doctors politely call non-functional. After that, I stopped being a son. I become a liability with a heartbeat. Here's the part that should make your blood boil. 6 months after the accident, my father calls a family meeting. I think, finally, maybe he wants to check on me. Wrong. He wants me to sign papers. Transfer papers. My shares in Vance Group, gone. Redistributed to my brother Colton, for the good of the company's image. His words, not mine. I remember staring at that pen like it was a knife pointed at my own throat. "You're not fit to run anything anymore, Nolan," my father says, flat, like he's reading a weather report. "Investors don't trust a face they pity." My mother adds, and I quote, "It's not personal, sweetheart, it's optics. It's personal. It is the most personal thing that has ever happened to me." I look at Colton while my father slides that paper across the table. He doesn't meet my eyes. Not once. He just stares at his own hands, like he already knows what's about to happen, and doesn't have the spine to stop it. Which is almost funny, considering I'm the one who supposedly doesn't have a spine anymore. My mother refills her wine glass. During the exact moment her son loses everything he built his entire life around. That's the image that stays with me, not the crash. Not the hospital, that wine glass. I sign. What else can I do? I'm 26 years old. Half my body doesn't respond to my brain anymore. And the people who are supposed to love me unconditionally are handing me a pen like they're closing out a business account. Which, in their eyes, is exactly what I am. A closed account. 3 weeks later, they move me out of the family estate and into a small converted guest house at the edge of the property. Out of sight, out of mind. My old room gets turned into a home theater for Colton. My old office gets turned into a nursery, because apparently Colton and my ex, Brianna, are already planning a family. Fast workers. Real fast. I should have broken. Honestly, for a while, I do. But something happens in that guest house that nobody sees coming. Not my family. Not Colton. Not Brianna. Not even me at first. I get bored. And boredom, when you're trapped in a body that won't move the way it used to, turns into obsession real quick. I start reading. Financial reports, market theory, trading psychology, anything I can get my hands on through a cracked tablet nobody bothered to take from me because why would the useless brother need a tablet? At first it's just to kill time. Then I notice something. I'm good at this. Not decent. Good. The kind of good where numbers start talking to me in a language everyone else needs a translator for. See, here's a secret about me nobody in my family ever bothered to learn. Before the crash, I wasn't just the heir. I was quietly the sharpest analyst inside Vance Group, the one writing the actual strategy memos my father took credit for in board meetings. I just never got the credit because credit, in my family, only flows one direction. Up, to the father. Never down, never sideways, never to the broken one in the wheelchair. So I open an account, a small one. Nobody's watching a paralyzed son who supposedly lost his shares and his mind in the same accident. I trade under a name that isn't Vance. I call the account Ghost. Fitting, right? Because as far as my family is concerned, I already died on Route 9. Everything after that is just a haunting. The first month, Ghost makes $11,000. Small. Almost cute. My father spends more than that on a single dinner reservation. But it's mine. Nobody gave it to me. Nobody can take it away with a signature and a fake smile. The second month, Ghost makes $60,000. I remember staring at that number on the screen at 2 in the morning, guest house dark except for the glow of the laptop, and laughing out loud for the first time since the crash. Actually laughing. Marcus, my physical therapist, walked in the next morning and asked why I looked less miserable than usual. I didn't tell him. Not yet. Some things you keep in the dark a little longer, just to make sure they're real. By month 6, Ghost isn't small anymore. I start treating it like a second body, a second self that doesn't need legs to run, doesn't need my family's approval to move forward. Every trade becomes a small act of defiance. Every green number on that screen is a middle finger pointed directly at a dinner table I'm no longer welcome at. I stop sleeping normal hours. I start living on market time, watching futures open across other time zones while the rest of the estate sleeps peacefully, unaware that the broken sun is quietly outperforming every fund manager my father has ever hired. There's a particular kind of satisfaction in being underestimated that nobody warns you about. It's not loud, it's not dramatic, it's quiet, patient, almost cold. Every time my mother walks past the guest house without glancing in, I think, good, keep walking. Keep assuming nothing's happening in here. Every time Colton posts another photo of himself at some rooftop party captioned grinding, I think about the actual grinding happening 40 yards away in a converted garage he's never once bothered to visit. And here's where it gets dangerous, because power like that doesn't stay quiet for long. Word starts spreading in certain circles, whispers about an anonymous trader with an almost supernatural read on distressed companies, someone who buys the wreckage nobody else wants and somehow, impossibly, turns it gold. Nobody knows Ghost's real face. Nobody knows Ghost is sitting in a converted guest house, legs strapped into a wheelchair, laptop balanced on a tray, laughing quietly every time his family walks past the window without even glancing in. They think I'm gone. Ghost is just getting started. Meanwhile, back in the main house, my family's little fairy tale is falling apart, and they don't even know it yet. Colton, my golden replacement, gets handed my old position at Vance Group. Problem is, Colton was never actually good at this. He was good at being liked, good at parties, good at photo ops with my father's business partners, but strategy, numbers, reading a market before it collapses, that was always me, quietly, in the background, while Colton got the applause. 6 months into running my division, Colton makes a call that should never have been made. He pushes the company into a massive acquisition of a failing logistics chain, against the advice of 3 separate analysts, because one of my father's oldest friends convinces him it's a legacy opportunity. Translation: somebody wanted to dump garbage on my family, and my brother bought it with a smile on his face. I know this because I still have contacts inside Vance Group, loyal ones, people who never forgot who actually wrote the good strategy memos. One of them, a woman named Priya who used to be my assistant before the crash, still checks in on me. Officially, it's just visiting a friend. Unofficially, she's my eyes and ears inside enemy territory. "They're bleeding money, Nolan," she tells me one evening, sitting across from my kitchen table like it's nothing. Like she isn't risking her job just being seen with me. "Colton doesn't know what he's doing. Your father's starting to panic." I don't say anything for a second. Just let that sit in the room. Then I smile, and it's not a nice smile. "Good," I say. "Let him panic." Because here's what nobody in my family understands yet. Ghost isn't just trading random companies. Ghost has been quietly circling one very specific target for months. A struggling logistics chain with bad leadership, worse debt, and one very juicy weakness. It's the exact same company my brother is about to acquire. I already own 18% of it. Building that position wasn't quick, and it wasn't cheap, and it definitely wasn't clean. I spent 4 months routing purchases through 3 separate entities, staggering the buy-ins so no single filing would raise a red flag, timing each move around slow news weeks so nobody would think to ask questions. Denise handled the legal architecture. I handled the timing. There were nights I second-guessed the whole plan, sitting there at 3 in the morning wondering if I was building an empire or just an elaborate, expensive way to feel like I still mattered to somebody, even if that somebody was a spreadsheet. Then I'd remember the pen. I'd remember my father's watch. I'd remember Brianna's hand slipping out of mine like I was something she needed to wipe off. And the second guessing would disappear real quick. Under a shell corporation, of course. Nothing with my name on it. Nothing that traces back to a paralyzed nobody living in a guest house. As far as anyone can tell, that 18% belongs to a mysterious holding group out of Delaware that nobody can quite place. Investors are starting to call it the ghost position. They have no idea how right they are. When Colton pushes the acquisition through, Vance Group doesn't just buy a failing company. They buy a company where the second largest shareholder is me. I nearly laugh out loud when Priya tells me the deal closes. My own family just handed me a seat at the table of their biggest mistake, and they don't even know it. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up, because there's a piece of this you need to understand, and it's not about money. It's about Brianna. Brianna and I were supposed to get married 8 months after the crash. Big wedding, big families, big cameras. Instead, 3 days after my father tells the doctors and the world that his son is medically unfit to continue certain responsibilities, Brianna quietly moves her things out of my old apartment and into Colton's. Nobody tells me directly. I find out because a wedding planner accidentally CCs me on an email about the Vance wedding, and it's not my name attached to the date anymore. It's Colton's. That's the moment something in my chest goes cold and stays cold. You want to know the worst part? It's not even that she left. People leave. I get that. I do, even if it gutted me at the time. It's what she said to a mutual friend, something that friend later, guilt-ridden, repeats back to me almost word for word. I didn't sign up to push a wheelchair for the rest of my life. I sat with that sentence for a long time, longer than I want to admit. I kept replaying our last real conversation before the crash, the one where she told me she couldn't wait to be Mrs. Vance, couldn't wait for the house, the wedding, the life. I used to think that meant she couldn't wait for me. Turns out I misread the sentence completely. It was never about me. It was about the version of me that came with legs, a title, and a family that still smiled for cameras. I'm not proud of the version of myself that existed in the weeks after I found out. There were nights I sat in that guest house replaying every memory, looking for the exact moment she stopped seeing a person and started seeing an inconvenience. You do that to yourself when you're grieving something that's still alive, still walking around, still smiling at parties like nothing happened. It's a strange kind of haunting. And then I did what Ghost does best. I turned pain into fuel. See, Brianna's family runs a boutique investment firm, small but respected, the kind of firm that survives on reputation more than size. Her father built it from nothing, and Brianna was set to inherit it someday. Same way I was set to inherit Vance Group. Poetic, right? 2 heirs, 2 empires, 1 crash that blew up both futures in completely different ways. What Brianna doesn't know, what nobody in either family knows, is that her father's firm took on a very risky, very quiet loan 18 months ago to cover a bad real estate bet. A loan that Ghost, through 3 layers of shell entities, ends up quietly purchasing. I don't do anything with it, not yet. I just hold it, like a card face down on the table. Because that's the thing about being underestimated. Everyone assumes the broken guy in the wheelchair can't play the long game. They think grief and humiliation make you weak. Sometimes they make you patient instead. Patient in a way that should scare people, if they were paying attention. Nobody's paying attention. That's the whole point. A year passes, then another. Ghost's portfolio stops being a rumor in certain rooms and starts being a legend. Financial journalists write speculative pieces trying to guess who's behind it. One outlet nicknames the mystery investor the wheelchair whale, not knowing how accidentally accurate that is, and the internet runs with it as a joke. No idea they're laughing about a real, breathing person sitting in a converted guest house eating cold takeout while making trades that move entire sectors. Meanwhile, at Vance Group, things keep sliding. Colton's bad acquisition drags the company's stock down 11% in a single quarter. My father starts holding closed-door meetings that leak just enough for Priya to keep feeding me updates. Investors are getting nervous. Board members who used to fawn over my father now ask sharper questions in meetings, the kind of questions that make him sweat through his $3,000 suits. And through all of it, nobody once thinks to check on me. Not a call, not a visit. My mother sends a card on my birthday that says, "Thinking of you," in a stranger's handwriting, because she had her assistant sign it. That's the level of thinking of me we're talking about. Fine. If they want to forget I exist, I'll let them. Right up until the exact moment it benefits me most to remind them. That moment comes at the Vance Group annual charity gala. You have to understand what this event means to my family. It's not really charity, it's theater. It's where my father parades the family in front of donors, investors, and half the city's old money, proving that the Vance name is still strong, still glittering, still worth trusting with billions of dollars. Every year I used to stand at my father's side for this. Now apparently I'm not even on the guest list. I find out through Priya, obviously, 3 days before the event. They're doing the gala at the Whitmore Hotel this year, she tells me over the phone, hesitant, like she already knows how I'm going to react. Nolan, your name isn't on the list. I don't say anything for a long moment. They're introducing Colton as the official successor, she adds quietly. Full transition announcement. Front page stuff. There it is. The final door slamming shut. My father isn't just sidelining me anymore. He's erasing me. Publicly. Permanently. In front of every single person who used to respect the name Nolan Vance. I could feel sorry for myself. God knows I've earned the right, after everything. Instead, I feel something sharper. Something that's been quietly building for 2 years under a fake name and a mountain of numbers nobody else could read. I decide I'm going to that gala, not as Nolan Vance, disgraced, disabled, disowned, as Ghost. Getting there is its own small war. My body still doesn't cooperate the way it used to, and honestly, some days getting dressed alone takes more effort than an entire trading session. But I have help now. Real help, not family help, the other kind. The kind you build yourself when the people who were supposed to show up for you don't. There's Marcus, my physical therapist turned actual friend. One of maybe 3 people who never once looked at me like I was less than a person after the crash. There's Priya, obviously, feeding me information from inside enemy lines for 2 straight years out of loyalty that has nothing to do with money. And there's a lawyer named Denise Okafor, sharp as broken glass, who's been quietly setting up my shell structures and holding companies since month 4 of the Ghost account, back when I could barely lift my own arms without pain, let alone sign documents. The 3 of them help me get ready. Marcus adjusts the wheelchair, a sleek matte black custom piece, nothing like the clunky hospital-issued chair my family used to wince at. Denise brings a suit tailored specifically for how my body sits now, sharp, expensive, undeniable. Priya does one final check on the numbers we're about to reveal, because tonight isn't just about showing up. Tonight is about detonating something. See, over the last 2 years, Ghost hasn't just been quietly buying up shares in that failing logistics company Colton acquired. Ghost has also been quietly buying up shares in Vance Group itself, slowly, carefully, through enough shell layers that even my father's own legal team, the best money can buy, never once connected the dots. Tonight, I own 14% of my own family's company. Combined with the 18% from the logistics acquisition and a handful of smaller strategic positions Ghost has picked up over 2 years of quiet, patient warfare, I walk into that gala controlling enough leverage to make my father's hands shake if he only knew. He doesn't know, not yet. The Whitmore Hotel ballroom is exactly how I remember it. Crystal chandeliers, a string quartet playing something forgettable, a sea of people in black tie pretending to care about the charity of the year while actually caring about who's standing next to who in the group photos. My father is at the center of it, of course, holding court. Colton at his side in a suit that costs more than most people's cars, Brianna on Colton's arm looking exactly like the perfect trophy she was always groomed to be. Then the doors open. I roll in. The entire room doesn't go silent immediately. That's not how it works in real life. It happens in ripples. A few heads turn first, confused, wondering who let a stranger in a wheelchair crash the Vance Group gala. Then someone recognizes my face, and the ripple turns into a wave, and within maybe 45 seconds, the entire ballroom has gone dead quiet, every single conversation dying mid-sentence. My father's expression when he sees me is something I will remember for the rest of my life. Shock first, then something closer to horror. Because in his mind, I'm supposed to be tucked away in that guest house, forgotten, invisible, a problem he solved 2 years ago with a signature and some cold optics talk. Nolan, he says, voice tight, forcing something that's supposed to pass for warmth in front of 300 witnesses. What a surprise. Is it? I say, rolling closer, calm, steady, nothing like the broken shadow they left behind. I would have thought you'd save a seat for one of your biggest shareholders. The room doesn't understand yet. My father does. I watch the exact moment the blood drains from his face. What are you talking about? He says quietly, through a smile that's barely holding together for the audience. I nod once toward the entrance, and that's Denise's cue. She walks in with a tablet, professional, unhurried, and hands it directly to my father in front of everyone. On the screen, laid out clean and undeniable, is the full ownership breakdown of the mystery entity known across financial media as Ghost. 14% of Vance Group. 18% of the logistics company he bragged about acquiring under Colton's leadership. Multiple other strategic positions across companies my father has quietly done business with for years. All of it traced back, through Denise's careful legal work, to one name. Mine. You didn't lose your seat at this company 2 years ago, Dad, I say, loud enough now for the closest tables to hear, my voice steady even though my heart is slamming against my ribs. You just made me build a new one myself. Somebody in the crowd gasps audibly. A journalist near the back is already typing so fast I can practically hear the keys clicking from here. My father's hand is still holding the tablet, but his grip has gone loose, like the weight of it suddenly doubled. This has to be a mistake, he says, quieter now, almost to himself. The filings would have shown up. Legal would have caught this. Your legal team is good, I say. Mine's better. And unlike you, I had 2 years with nothing to do but plan every single move. He looks up at me, and for one brief second, just one, I see something flicker across his face that isn't anger or panic. It almost looks like recognition. Like he's seeing me, actually seeing me, for the first time since the crash. It doesn't last. It never does with him. The mask comes right back down, smoothed over for the room full of witnesses still frozen mid-conversation around us. We built this company as a family, he says, louder now, trying to reclaim the narrative in front of the crowd. Whatever games you're playing, Nolan, this isn't the way to handle it. Funny, I say. I don't remember being a family when you handed me a pen and called me a liability. I don't remember family when you moved me into a guest house so investors wouldn't have to look at me. This isn't a game, Dad. This is just math. And for once, the math is mine. Colton, to his credit, at least tries to recover first. This is insane, he says, laughing in that nervous way he does when he's out of his depth, which, let's be honest, is most of the time. You expect us to believe you built this from a wheelchair? I don't expect you to believe anything, I say. I expect you to check the filings. They're public now. As of about 4 minutes ago. That last part isn't a bluff. Denise timed the disclosure release to hit exactly when I rolled through those doors. Every financial outlet covering Vance Group tonight is about to have the story of the decade drop straight into their inbox, live, during the gala itself, in front of every investor and donor my father spent years cultivating. My mother, who hasn't said a single word to me in almost 2 years, finally speaks, and of course it's not an apology. It's damage control. Nolan, sweetheart, let's discuss this privately. This isn't the place. You didn't think a guest house was too private for me, I cut in, and my voice doesn't even shake. Funny how privacy only matters to this family when it's convenient. Brianna won't even look at me. Smart move, honestly. There's nothing she could say right now that wouldn't sound worse than silence. Then, and this is the part I genuinely didn't see coming, one of the older board members, a woman named Eleanor Voss who sat on Vance Group's board since before I was born, stands up from her table, walks straight past my father like he isn't even there, and extends her hand to me. Mr. Vance, she says, deliberately, pointedly, the board would very much like to speak with you. Soon. And just like that, the balance of power in that ballroom flips completely upside down. By the time I leave the gala that night, 3 separate board members have quietly asked for private meetings. 2 major donors have made a point of introducing themselves like they're meeting me for the first time, which, in a way, they are. And my father, the man who called me a liability with optics problems 2 years ago, is standing frozen near the bar, watching his empire realize in real time that the son he threw away might be the only thing holding half of it together. I should have felt satisfied. For about 10 minutes, I do. Then Denise pulls me aside, her face tighter than I've seen it in 2 years of working together, and tells me something that changes everything all over again. Nolan, she says quietly, glancing around to make sure nobody's close enough to hear. There's a problem with the logistics acquisition filing. What kind of problem? The kind where someone else has been buying shadow positions against you for the last 4 months, she says. Someone who knew about Ghost before tonight. Someone who's been building a counterposition this whole time. My stomach drops. Who? She hesitates, which is not a thing Denise does. Denise doesn't hesitate. We don't know yet, she says. But whoever it is, they're not small, and they're not finished. I look back across the ballroom, at my father still frozen near the bar, at Colton whispering something furious into Brianna's ear, at Eleanor Voss watching me with an expression I can't quite read yet. 2 hours ago I thought tonight was the finish line. Turns out it's barely the starting gun. How long have they been building this position? I ask. 4 months, Denise says. Maybe longer. Whoever it is, they knew about Ghost before it was public. Before the gala. Before tonight. That's the part that sticks in my chest like a splinter. Somebody's been watching me the entire time I thought I was the only one watching. Somebody patient enough, careful enough, ruthless enough to build a counter-move against a ghost nobody was supposed to be able to find. I sit with that for a second, the noise of the gala fading behind me, the taste of victory already going sour in my mouth. 2 years I spent building Ghost in the shadows, patient, invisible, untouchable. Tonight I finally stepped into the light, finally made my family beg, finally took back what should have never been taken from me in the first place. And somewhere out there, somebody's been watching the whole time, waiting for exactly this moment to make their move. Everyone in that ballroom thinks the story ends with me finally winning. They have no idea it's only just getting started. The name sits in my chest like a stone dropped in still water. Someone's been watching me the entire time I thought I was the only one watching. Say that again, I tell Denise, because some sentences need to be repeated before they become real. 4 months, she says. Maybe longer. Shell entities, layered the same way we layer ours. Whoever built this knew exactly how Ghost operates. That's not luck, Nolan. That's someone who studied you. Studied me. Not the trades. Me. I look past her shoulder at the ballroom, still humming with shock, my father frozen near the bar like a man watching his own funeral from the wrong side of the glass, Colton whispering something furious at Brianna, Eleanor Voss watching all of it with the patience of someone who's seen empires rise and fall over canapes 100 times before. 10 minutes ago, this was the best night of my new life. Now it feels like the opening move of a much longer game, one I didn't know I was already playing. Get me everything you have by morning, I say. Every filing, every shell, every timestamp. Already on it, Denise says. Of course she is. Denise doesn't wait to be told twice. I don't sleep that night. That part isn't new. Sleep and I stopped being close friends somewhere around month 3 of learning how to trade from a wheelchair with a body that still forgets, some mornings, that it isn't supposed to work right anymore. But this is a different kind of awake. This is the kind where your mind won't stop turning one sentence over and over, sanding down the edges, looking for the shape underneath. Someone knew about Ghost before tonight. By 6 in the morning, I've gone through every name I can think of who might have the resources, the patience, and the motive to build a 4-month counterposition against a traitor nobody was supposed to be able to find. Competitors, old family enemies, disgruntled board members. None of it fits clean. Whoever this is didn't stumble onto Ghost by accident. They found the seams. They found the exact pattern I used to stagger my buy-ins, the exact rhythm I used to time my filings around slow news weeks. That's not guesswork. That's someone who's been standing close enough to watch me build the whole thing, brick by brick, without me ever noticing the shadow at my shoulder. Marcus shows up at 7 with coffee and a look on his face like he already knows the night went sideways somewhere after the gala. He's been doing this for 2 years now, reading me before I say a word. The way you learn to read someone when you've spent hundreds of hours helping them relearn how their own body works. You look like you fought somebody and lost, he says, setting the coffee down. Worse, I say. I think somebody's been fighting me, and I didn't even know I was in the ring. He doesn't ask for details. He never does, not right away. He just starts the morning stretches, hands steady on legs that still don't answer the way they used to, and lets me talk when I'm ready. That's the thing about Marcus nobody in my family ever understood. He never once treated me like a problem to be managed. He treated me like a person still worth showing up for. By 9, Denise is back with a tablet full of names, numbers, and one very uncomfortable connection. The counterposition, she says, sliding into the chair across from me, without waiting for an invitation, is being run through a firm called Ashford Meridian. The name doesn't mean anything to me at first. Then it does, and my stomach drops the same way it did last night at the gala, except colder this time, more personal. That's a subsidiary? Denise continues, watching my face carefully. Registered under a parent holding group. Guess who owns the parent holding group? Just tell me. Brianna's father. For a second, the room goes very quiet. The kind of quiet where you can hear your own heartbeat doing something it shouldn't. I think about Brianna at the gala last night, standing on Colton's arm, refusing to meet my eyes, and I wonder how much of that silence was guilt, and how much of it was strategy. That doesn't make sense, I say, mostly to myself. Brianna's father runs a boutique firm. Respected, careful. He's not the type to go picking fights with a company the size of Vance Group. He's not the type to survive without one either, Denise says. I pulled his firm's public filings this morning while you were sleeping. Or not sleeping, judging by the state of you. His numbers have been bleeding for over a year. Bad real estate exposure. A loan he took out to cover it 18 months ago. I already know exactly which loan she means, because I'm the one holding it. The loan I bought, I say slowly, letting the pieces settle into place like tumblers in a lock. The one I've just been sitting on this whole time. The same one, Denise confirms. Nolan, I think you've been holding a grenade for 2 years and didn't realize the pin was already halfway pulled. I sit with that for a moment, turning it over, feeling something shift underneath the shock, something colder and more useful than surprise. 2 years ago, I bought that loan on instinct, patience, a hunch that someday it might matter. I told myself it was just business, just Ghost doing what Ghost does, buying up weaknesses nobody else was watching closely enough to notice. I never let myself think too hard about the fact that the weakness belonged to the family of the woman who once told a mutual friend she didn't sign up to push a wheelchair for the rest of her life. Turns out I didn't need to think about it. I just needed to wait. So her father's firm is drowning, I say, and instead of coming to me, or coming clean to anyone, he decides the smartest move is secretly funding a counterposition against the guy who's holding his loan. That's the working theory, Denise says. Either he doesn't know his own leverage is compromised, which would be sloppy for a man in this business, or he's betting the counterposition pays off big enough that it doesn't matter whose loan he's sitting on by the time the dust settles. And if it doesn't pay off, then he's made an enemy of the one person who could call in that loan and collapse his entire firm overnight, Denise says. Which, given everything you've told me about this family, feels less like a mistake and more like a man who's already out of good options. I laugh, but there's no real humor in it. Sounds familiar. Great. Just great. Everyone in my orbit apparently specializes in running out of good options right around the moment I become the only person left holding all the leverage. Priya calls a little after 11, and I know before she even says a word that something's wrong. Because Priya never calls this early unless the ground is already shifting under someone's feet. Your father's furious, she says, voice low, the kind of low that means she's speaking from somewhere she shouldn't be overheard. Not gala furious. Different furious. He's called an internal review. Says someone's been leaking information out of the executive floor for months. My chest goes tight. Priya. I know, she says. I know what that means. He hasn't said my name yet, but he's pulling access logs, meeting attendance records, everyone who's had contact with financial disclosures before they went public. It's a short list, Nolan. I'm on it. Get out, I say immediately. Today. I'll figure out the money, I'll figure out everything else. Just get out before... No. Her voice sharpens, steady in a way that reminds me exactly why she was the best assistant Vance Group ever had before they lost the sense to see it. If I run now, that's the confession. I stay. I act normal. I let them find nothing, because there's nothing to find if I'm careful. Priya, if he connects you to me, then I'll deal with it, she says. The same way you dealt with 2 years in a guest house nobody bothered to check on. I didn't help you for 2 years just to fold the one time it gets uncomfortable. I don't have a good response to that. Some people you don't get to talk out of loyalty. You just have to trust they know what they're risking, and let them make the choice anyway. Watch yourself, I say finally. Please. Always do, she says, and hangs up before I can argue further. I sit there for a long moment after the call ends, staring at nothing, feeling the weight of it settle across my shoulders. 2 years ago, the only thing I had to protect was a secret trading account, and whatever was left of my pride. Now there's a growing list of people who put themselves on the line because they believed in something I built out of spite and spreadsheets in a converted guest house. That's a different kind of pressure. That's the kind that keeps you up at night for reasons that have nothing to do with market hours. By early afternoon, the story has already broken wide across financial media, exactly the way Denise timed it to. Headlines everywhere. Mystery investor ghost revealed as disowned Vance heir. Wheelchair whale unmasked. The internet, predictably, cannot decide whether to treat me like a folk hero or a conspiracy theory come to life. And honestly, at this point, I don't care which. Attention is attention. Leverage is leverage. What I do care about is the emergency meeting Colton calls for 4 o'clock that same afternoon. I hear about it through Priya, who apparently is determined to keep proving her loyalty despite the very real danger hanging over her right now. He's rallying, she tells me over a rushed, careful phone call, pulling in board members loyal to your father, trying to frame last night as a hostile stunt instead of a legitimate ownership disclosure. He wants to challenge the validity of your shares. On what grounds? Improper disclosure timing. Market manipulation? Take your pick, Priya says. He's grasping, but grasping loudly enough that a few of the older board members are nervous. Not everyone in that room is Eleanor Voss, Nolan. Some of them still remember Colton's face on magazine covers and haven't caught up to how badly he's actually been running things. I think about Colton at the gala, laughing that nervous laugh, insisting the whole thing was insane, refusing even for a second to consider that maybe, just maybe, the little brother he helped erase from the family had been quietly outperforming him the entire time. There's a version of me, an older version, the one who used to write strategy memos my father took credit for without complaint, who might have felt sorry for him right now. That version of me doesn't exist anymore. He died somewhere on Route 9, same as everything else. Let him call his meeting, I say. Let him grasp. You're not worried? I built 2 years of paper trail specifically so it couldn't be challenged, I say. Denise didn't cut a single corner. If Colton wants to make noise, let him make noise. Noise doesn't change ownership percentages. Still, I know better than to be careless. Confidence is useful. Arrogance gets people destroyed, and I've watched exactly how fast that can happen from the other side of the table. So I call Denise, ask her to prepare a formal response, ready to file the second Colton's little meeting tries to gain any real traction, and I spend the rest of the afternoon reviewing every filing connected to Ghost's position in Vance Group with a level of paranoid precision that would have made the old me, the pre-crash me, roll his eyes. The old me also never got betrayed by his own family with a pen and a wine glass, so I figure the paranoia's earned. Around 6, Denise comes back with something that changes the shape of the entire day. I dug deeper into Ashford Meridian, she says, sliding into the chair across from me again, tablet already open. The counterposition isn't just funded by Brianna's father's firm, it's structured almost identically to how you built Ghost's original positions. Same staggering pattern, same shell layering technique. You said that already. No, she says. I mean, it's not just similar, it's a near-exact copy. Whoever advised on this counterposition either studied your exact methodology in obsessive detail, or she stops herself, like she doesn't quite want to finish the sentence. Or what, I say. Or they had access to internal information about how Ghost was structured, Denise says carefully. Something that isn't public. Something only a handful of people would know. The room goes cold again, colder this time, because that short list of people who know exactly how Ghost is structured includes maybe 4 names on the entire planet. Denise. Marcus, loosely, from what he's overheard over 2 years of appointments. Priya. And me. You're not suggesting, I start, and can't quite finish it either. I'm not suggesting anything yet, Denise says. I'm telling you what the pattern shows. Someone with intimate knowledge of your methodology helped build the position against you. Whether that's a leak, a coincidence, or something else entirely, I don't know yet, but I'd be lying to you if I said it wasn't worth losing sleep over. I think about Priya, who I trust with my life, who's been risking her career, and possibly worse, for 2 years without asking for anything in return. I think about Marcus, whose hands have been steady on my body through more painful mornings than I can count, who never once treated me like the family did. I refuse, even for a second, to let my mind sit in that particular direction. Not because it's impossible. Because some kinds of doubt, if you let them in, rot everything they touch, even the things that are still good. Keep digging, I say instead, quietly. I want to know exactly who's behind Ashford Meridian before I make my next move, not after. And the loan? Denise asks. You know that's still sitting there, fully within your legal right to call in whenever you want. I look at the numbers on the screen, the same numbers I've been sitting on for 2 years, like a card face down on the table, waiting for exactly the right moment. Brianna's father's firm, drowning quietly under a loan he thought was buried deep enough to forget about, now secretly funding an attack against the one person who could bury him with a single phone call. Every trade becomes a small act of defiance, I used to tell myself, back when Ghost was just a way to survive the nights. This one feels different. This one feels less like defiance and more like inevitability. 2 years of patience finally arriving exactly where it was always going to land. Not yet, I say, even though every instinct in me is screaming to pull the trigger immediately. I want to understand what I'm actually walking into first. If her father's desperate enough to fund a shadow attack against Ghost, I want to know what else he's desperate enough to do. Denise studies me for a moment, the way she does when she's deciding whether to push back or trust the read. That's smarter than what most people would do in your position, she says finally. Most people didn't spend 2 years learning patience from a wheelchair, I say. The night passes slower than I want it to. Colton's emergency meeting, according to Priya's late update, ends up going about as well as I expected, which is to say it doesn't go anywhere at all. A few board members raise concerns, mostly performative, easily dismantled the second Denise's formal response lands in their inboxes the next morning. Eleanor Voss, apparently, doesn't even bother attending, which tells its own story about where the real power in that boardroom is starting to settle. But it's the message Priya sends just after midnight that pulls the ground out from under me completely. Your father knows someone's been feeding you information. He's narrowing it down. I think he's close, Nolan. I might not have much time left in here. I stare at that message for a long time. The glow of the screen, the only light in the guest house, same as every night for the past 2 years. Somewhere out there, someone's been quietly building a weapon against me for 4 months using knowledge that shouldn't exist outside a tiny circle of people I trust with everything. Somewhere in that same house I used to call home, my father is hunting for the person who's been my eyes and ears for 2 straight years. The one ally inside enemy territory who never once asked for anything except loyalty in return. And somewhere in the middle of all of it sits alone, quiet, patient, waiting, connected to the one person whose absence still leaves a cold spot in my chest I've never quite managed to fill with spreadsheets and shell corporations, no matter how hard I've tried. I make the decision a little after 2 in the morning, the same hour Ghost made its first real money 2 years ago, the same hour I laughed out loud for the first time since the crash. There's something almost poetic about that, if I let myself think about it too long. I don't let myself think about it too long. I call Denise. It's the middle of the night, she says, voice thick with sleep but already alert, because Denise has never once failed to pick up when it matters. Call in the loan, I say. First thing tomorrow, all of it. No extensions, no negotiations, no quiet warnings first. There's a pause on the other end, just long enough for me to know she understands exactly what I'm setting in motion. You know what that does, she says carefully. That doesn't just hurt her father's firm, Nolan. That collapses it, immediately. And it's going to bring her right to your door, because there won't be anyone else left for her family to send. I think about Brianna at the gala, refusing to meet my eyes, smart enough to know there was nothing she could say that wouldn't sound worse than silence. I think about a mutual friend, guilt-ridden, repeating her words back to me almost exactly. I didn't sign up to push a wheelchair for the rest of my life. I think about a wedding planner's email, a name that wasn't mine anymore, a life that got quietly reassigned to my brother while I was still learning how to hold a spoon with hands that didn't fully answer to me yet. 2 years I spent turning that pain into something useful, something patient, something that could wait as long as it needed to wait for the exact right moment to matter. This is the moment. I know exactly what it does, I say. Call it in. And if she shows up here, Denise asks, what do you want me to tell her? I look out the window of the guest house, toward the main estate lit up in the distance, toward a life that used to be mine before a crash on Route 9 rewrote every single rule I thought I understood about who was allowed to love me and who wasn't. Tell her nothing, I say quietly. Tell her I'll say it myself, because after 2 years of silence, 2 years of being erased, 2 years of building an empire out of spite in a converted guest house nobody bothered to check on, there's exactly one conversation left that Ghost can't handle from behind a shell corporation. One conversation that has to happen face to face. No tablet, no lawyer, no dramatic reveal in front of 300 witnesses. Just me and the woman who let go of my hand slowly enough to make it look like an accident. Denise doesn't argue. She just says, quiet and certain, it'll be done by morning. I hang up the phone and sit there in the dark a long while, heart pounding harder than any market opening ever managed to make it pound, because calling in alone is just numbers on a page. Facing Brianna again, for the first time since the day she disappeared from my life without a single real word of goodbye, is something else entirely. Somewhere out there, her father's firm is about to collapse under weight I've been quietly holding for 2 years. Somewhere out there, Priya is running out of time inside a house that used to be my home. And somewhere very close, closer than it's been in 2 long years, Brianna is about to walk back into my life. And this time, there's no wheelchair-shaped blind spot big enough for her to look away from what's coming.